Hi folks, this is Bob Main from the Handgun World Show. The reason I carry a gun is because I can't carry a cop. Bear with me, I'm filming this by myself today, no cameraman. Anyway, I want to talk about competition shooting. And I'm going to talk about my rig and what I use, the gun, the holster, the mag pouches and so forth, and why I prefer what I use. Now it's just a matter of personal opinion like any other video like this or podcast is. And by the way, speaking of podcasts, if you haven't had a chance to listen to my podcast, it's called Handgun World Show and it's on iTunes. Just search Handgun World Show, or you can go straight to the website www.handgunworld.com. Feel free to leave any comments too that you want. Okay, competition. First of all, why competition? I've covered this a little bit on my podcast, but give me about 30 seconds here to cover this. I think it reinforces good gun handling skills, and it helps you practice things you can't practice at a square range. It is not, and I'll say it again, competition shooting is not combat training. It's not gunfighting training. You need to take gunfighting training. You need to go to a good class at Masad Ayub Group, Tactical Response, Suarez International, Rob Pincus's ICE training. They're all really good, okay? Get some good training under your belt. You can practice at the IDPA match some, not all, because you might break some safety rules, but you can practice some of what you learn in your combat training classes. But for competition, it's also fun, and it builds good camaraderie. So, what do I use? First of all, I'll introduce my Glock 34. The action's open, it's unloaded. Do a quick safety check here. Alright, we have a safe and clear weapon. So, how do I have this set up? Right now, this Glock is in almost stock configuration. Almost. I say that, because there's a few things that I've changed about it, and I'll tell you, but not much. First of all, let's talk about the sights. The sights are Warren Savigny sights. Actually, these are the Savigny competition sights made by Warren Tactical. Check out that. Just go ahead and Google Warren Tactical Savigny carry sights. Excuse me, Savigny competition sights. Black on black. I've got a black front sight and a black rear sight. I like it that way. It's a sight picture that I'm used to. It's what I grew up with pretty much. I kind of grew up shooting rifles and shotguns with black on black sights. Almost all of them had black sights on. So that's, I've been shooting that way for years. And I just find it real easy to acquire. I can see that black front sight, no problem. One thing I like is it's a very tall front sight. I like the tall front sight. I also like the wide rear notch. For competition, you definitely want the wide rear notch. Actually, I think for just about anything, you want that wide notch in the back. It gives me a lot of light on both the left-hand side and the right-hand side of the sight, which I like. It also helps for getting a good sight picture. So obviously that's different. Out of the box, the Glock 34 comes with the Glock Sights, which I hate, an adjustable rear sight. You know what? I don't think you need to have an adjustable rear sight on a Glock 34, my personal opinion, especially for IDPA stock service pistol shooting. I don't think it makes that much of a difference. Unless you're doing some intricate reloading, then you might want to have the adjustable sight depending on how you load your ammunition. But other than that, if you shoot factory ammo like me, I'm a factory ammo guy, the fixed sights are good enough in my personal opinion. The other thing that I've done here is I've actually left the extended slide release on the gun. Now, I put it back on the gun. I had for about 6 months. I got rid of this, and I went to the stock slide release that Glock puts on the gun. The reason being is because during recoil, when the gun was coming up during recoil, my thumb was accidentally depressing that slide release. And the slide was ramming forward when I didn't want it to, okay? It was doing it prematurely. So I corrected that by getting rid of this extended and putting the stock one on. Lately, I've been changing my grip a little bit, and it hasn't been much of a problem. So I went back to this. Now, I kind of waffle on this. I'm not sure which one I like. I'm probably going to go back to using the stock, and I'll tell you why. Because in some of the other videos, I use that method right there for chambering a new round. And I like to train myself to use that method. I don't like to use the slide release. It's just personal preference. And there's different reasons that I won't get into on this video for that. I've changed my grip, and I've taken this strong hand thumb and just dropped it on top of my weak hand like that, keeping it away from that slide release. Then it's not a problem. When the gun recoils, I don't have a problem anymore with accidentally depressing that. I have also kept the magazine release extended button on there. I really like the extended magazine release button. For me, you know, my hands fit a Glock pretty well anyway, and for me, I can get to that without having to change my grip. Okay, without having to rotate my hand in any direction, I can hit that slide release or that magazine release button. That's what I really like. So this is my setup now. This is my gun setup. The only thing that I have done internally is I've changed out the trigger spring to an overpowered trigger spring. It's got more power than the stock Glock trigger spring. That does help with the trigger pull just a little bit. Okay? I'm not going to say that it lightens the trigger. It doesn't really lighten it, I don't think. It just kind of smooths it out, maybe lightens it just a little bit. It actually helps, it assists you in pulling the trigger. Excuse me. Pressing the trigger. Got to get that out of my head, right? It assists you with a nice, smooth trigger press. An overpowered trigger spring. These are Wolf springs in here. I got a Wolf spring kit. Now, something else that I want to show you. Let's field strip this for a minute. The other thing that I'm running in my Glock 34 is a different recoil spring and guide rod that comes with it. This may look stock, but it's not. That is a metal guide rod. It looks like the stock, but it's not. It's metal. And I've also got a different trigger spring in there. I've got an underpowered, it's about a 13-pound trigger spring in there right now. The reason I'm doing that, yeah, I think it's 13 pounds. The reason I'm doing that is I think it's a little bit less muzzle flip. I hate having to try to get these back in there. There we go. Oh, by the way, did you notice something? It's a non-captured guide rod. The spring just slides right off it easily. It makes it a lot easier to change springs when you're out there. Anyway, the reason I run that 13-pound trigger spring sometimes is I think there's less muzzle flip. Now sometimes you feel a little bit more recoil coming back because you don't have as much weight to soak up the recoil, but primarily when the slide goes back forward, it's not going back forward with as much force, and it's not dipping the front of my gun down as much. I don't know, you know, that's kind of one of those little things that remains to be seen whether that's effective or not. But that's my competition setup, and I use this in stock service pistol. Now, as for holsters, let me keep the gun for a minute. I'm going to show you something. This is a comp tack holster. This is just a regular belt slide comp tack holster. And what I've done is I've cut the bottom off of it a little bit, about an inch off the bottom. The reason being is because when I carry this, sometimes I do use this for carry during the winter, and I use my Glock 19, the barrel doesn't stick out past the bottom of the holster. So I cut it just right so that the barrel of my Glock 19 doesn't stick out. So if I have like a light jacket on, or if I have an untucked shirt like this, the barrel of the gun or the holster is not going to be seen underneath my shirt. Okay, it's not going to stick past my shirt line. That's the reason why I cut this holster off. And it doesn't matter when I use my Glock 34. My Glock 34 barrel comes through the bottom of that holster, but I don't care in competition. In competition, it's not going to be that big of a deal if they can see the bottom. Technically, they're not supposed to be able to see any gun and holster, but I'm not quite as... Usually, sometimes I'm wearing a vest anyway, or I'm wearing a really long shirt so you don't see it. I love these compact competition holsters. They're very fast. It's an incredibly fast draw. I highly recommend it. Locks into place, holds the gun in place real well, so you got real good retention. Okay? Absolutely love the comp tack holster for competition. Sometimes I use a nice Safariland holster, and this one's almost as fast. Okay, now that one you can see is the proper length for the Glock 34. I didn't cut that one off. Too nice of a holster to be cutting on it. I love the Safariland. One of the things I like about this Safariland model It's the model 5186. It's got kind of like some felt material. I'm not really sure what it is, but the interior is kind of a felt, softer interior. So I know some people say, well, who cares if you scratch a Glock? At least with a lot of drawing, especially with dry fire practice, when I'm drawing my gun, I like to use this holster with the felt so that it's not scratching up my Glock. But for those of you who really care about your guns, if you got expensive 1911s and you don't want to get them all scratched up, I highly recommend this Safariland holster because the interior of it won't scratch your gun, especially if you get dust or dirt inside your holster. All right, mag pouches. These are the CompTac mag pouches. What a bad time to get a phone call. I should have turned my phone off. All right. Anyway, these are the CompTac mag pouches. I love these mag pouches. They also allow you to pull the mags out easily, okay? And these just go on my belt, and it's really easy. You can adjust the tension on all of these, which I like. It'll still hold it in pretty well. It'll hold it into place, but you can also get it out quickly. So that's my setup. The CompTac, just the regular mag pouches that CompTac has on their website. Sometimes the Safariland holster, but most of the time the CompTac belt holster and Glock 34. And that's pretty much my setup. You know, that's my competition setup. So, you know, folks, if you have any questions, let me know. If you're going to compete in stock service pistol, I think this is one of the best setups you can have. It's going to take a lot of practice, but for stock service pistol, it works very well. So again, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm Bob Main. This is the Handgun World Show, and this is the YouTube channel for the Handgun World Show. And the reason I carry a gun is because I can't carry a cop. Thank you.